Well, hello and welcome. This is like interesting. This is going to be really a lot of fun tonight. So thank you for joining me. Now, I know that many of you out of curiosity are going to look and be watching the replay. So hello to you. So we've got a lot to talk about, and I've got a very special guest with me, all the way from Australia, same as me. And anyway, we've got a little bit to do and talk about before we introduce the guest. So let's get started. Well, hello everybody again, and Gail and Phyllis and Nikki and Ballistic and Maz, and I'm just me, Poppy Seeds, Laura, Wind Whispers, Smiley Mama, Gail, Sarah Loves Donuts. Hopefully I haven't missed anybody. But look, there is some news that's come out today. Now, I did a story the other day about Facebook banning news feeds. Well, guess what? They caved in. They caved in. So let me just show you this. So it says, Facebook to reverse news ban on Australian sites. Government to make amendments to media bargaining code. That's right. It's taken days of negotiation, but there have been talks today with Mark Zuckerberg and the Australian Treasurer, Mr. Frydenberg, and they have come to, oh, I'm so big. they have come to an agreement. They have come to an agreement, and they have been able to negotiate a deal. So it's been reported that Facebook has negotiated a deal with 7 Media. And so 7 West was the first to make a move. So it looks like, for those of you that have been enjoying your nice, quiet Facebook pages without the news, looks like the news is coming back. So that's an update on a story that I did. Pinnacle of integrity. I know, like of all the news articles, of all the news companies to do that, but that's just my opinion, by the way. That's not fact, just my opinion. So it'll be interesting to see what happens out of Canada now, because Canada's looking at similar rules and see whether there's any negotiation. So this article states that there will be some amendments made. So after further discussions, we are satisfied that the Australian government has agreed to a number of changes and guarantees that address our core concerns about allowing commercial deals that recognise the value of our platform provides to publishers relative to the value we receive from them. As a result of these changes, we can now work to further our investment in public interest journalism and restore news on Facebook for Australia in the coming days. Well, isn't that just so exciting? As I said, personally, I've really enjoyed having no news. But I know you haven't really... I know you're not really all really interested in that, but anyway, that's just an update. And the other thing is, Twitter's been really quiet today, which has been a bit of a worry, because every time we've had a really quiet day, hello, the Amber Chick, Beth Bryant, Sammy J. Well, I can show you the Twitter, but it's not very exciting. It's been very quiet today. Hello, love bugs. So let's have a look. So we've got Jill sold us out. Joy Anna Duggar outraged at Jill Duggar for exposing family secrets for money. Sister wives, the Browns admit that they are felons and fear arrest. Poppy seeds. It's funny you should say that, because I was actually chatting to Rick earlier, and we were talking about Twitter, and I said every time there's been a quiet day on Twitter, there has been a filing the next day. So I'm waiting. I'm wondering whether we're going to get a what's poppin' Twitter. Then we've got to all the people that have lost a loved one from COVID, to the 500,000 families that have lost a loved one. My heart goes out to you all. I'm sorry for your loss. These deaths were needless, given we could have done more to stop the spread. Joe with a Poppy's just said, Joe with a crystal ball. Well, that's the pattern of behaviour. Hello, Harmony. Everyone's coming in. So, and then we've got, thank you. I lost Dad and lost my best friend's mum, who was like a mum to me. It was horrible not being able to be there with them. Hardest thing I've gone to. I'm sorry for your loss. Yes. So then, hey, Michelle. So then, tomorrow is my hubby's 50th birthday. I love this man so damn much. He's my rock best friend and best father I could ever ask for. He's been unfairly smeared by so many people. He's a wonderful man, and I'm grateful to have him. Happy birthday to my love. Happy birthday to Todd. Happy birthday, da, 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 da. There we go. Everyone's saying happy birthday. I'm sure that Tuddy Westbrook says that her husband's been unfairly smeared too, but that's another story. And that is Twitter. That's all that's been on Twitter today. Seriously, that is all on Twitter. So, you know, are we expecting a what's poppin' Twitter? So as you know, we've been really trying to work out what on earth got Lori-Ann to flip. And I wondered about whether if we put everything in a table or put everything together, whether there was some way that we could work out or see from it all what exactly was happening. Well, hello, Dutch Spirit. Unfairly smeared scale. Well, Poppy Seeds actually has done that and has been able to make drawn a couple of conclusions. Now, bear in mind, this is based on everything that we've got. Okay, so, you know, we're not breaking an exclusive. We're not. But Poppy Seeds is a lawyer from Sydney, an Australian lawyer, and so also remember that the rules and laws are slightly different. So, but anyway, she's put everything together. You'll see that I pinned a Dropbox link on the up the top of this chat. If you're able to download it because it will be a lot easier to see. And I thought, rather than try and make sense of this table, why not get Poppy Seeds to join us and explain this table, explain it all. There's 3 pages, and what conclusions she's drawn from this, because there's some very interesting conclusions. We haven't spoken. We did a very quick test run about just before we started. So let me just bring Poppy Seeds in and say hello. Poppy, how are you?
Hello, Joe. I'm well,
okay.
Thank you.
Can everybody hear her? Can you say hello? Can everyone tell us whether you can hear Poppy?
Hello, everyone.
Yes. So we got a yes. Okay. So Poppy doesn't work in civil litigation. She works in a specialist, but in a specialist field, which is fine, but she's still a lawyer. And so this has been something different for her, for you, hasn't it, Poppy?
Yes. So I consider myself a little bit similar to some other commentators. So, for example, uncivil law. But I suppose so I work in a specialist field as opposed to civil litigation and quite far removed from things like defamation. And then a step further, because I'm not a US attorney either. But having said that, with legal training, you learn how to review things in a certain way. You tend to approach things with a particular mindset. It doesn't mean you'll agree with every other legal professional out there, as we know. But I still thought it would be interesting, if only for myself, to try and take a deeper look into, the information that we've got on file and see what can we make of it. Is there something that we can actually take away from 200 pages of screenshots and turn it into something that's a bit more solid?
Okay, so you've got it all color coded. So for those of you that have downloaded it, you'll notice it's all color coded. So there's some blue and some pink stuff. So do the colors mean anything?
So the colors are really just to specify what kind of a note it is a lot of the time. So the purple ones or the blue ones are just showing that a filing occurred on that day and a summary of what the filing was. The sort of peach ones are, I think there's only two, it's just emails that are relevant but were not between Brown and Lori-Ann. And the pink ones are just notes that I had regarding the emails. For example, where it's apparent that emails are missing.
Okay, yep.
And that sort of thing.
All right, and then in the left column where you've got contact keywords, you've got again some in pink. Are they special?
Yes, so I didn't want to spend hours and hours copying and pasting content of the emails into a document. It would have taken way too long. So I thought it would be good to just put a little keyword bank as to what sort of information is covered in each email. And if someone's particularly interested in something, they can go find it for themselves.
Okay.
The pink bits are sort of milestone events that I thought was worth noting. So things like we know that Lori-Ann told Salt that he'd reached out to the wrong person or he'd named the wrong person. This is the email where that happens.
Okay, so that's email number 10. Like if we look at this table, for those of you following along at home, so it's email 10, isn't it? You've got here, Salt's informed of wrong Laurie by Lori-Ann. And then email 11, Brown contacted wrong Laurie. So that's 10 and 11, correct?
Yep.
Yep. So I know some people said that they can't see it because they're on their phones. So we'll need to sort of give a little bit of a further explanation. But some people have downloaded it and will have it on their screens. So if you haven't downloaded it, we'll do our best to talk through it. There is a lot of information here. But yeah, we'll see. And if you have any questions, of course, for Poppy Seeds, please put them in the chat. Can you see the chat, Poppy? Yep. So you put them in the chat if you have any questions, and we'll try and answer. But it's a very nice. I actually it made it a lot easier to read than all the going through all the emails.
Yeah, one thing I thought was really frustrating with the exhibits is that not all of the emails are in order.
Right.
There's a few specifically where, say for example, emails 12 and 13, or 11, 12, and 13. You'll see it goes from page 40 to page 41 to page 205 of the exhibit. So it made it quite difficult to follow when actually going through Brown's declaration. So part of the reason I wanted to make this was just to put everything in order so we could actually read through it in the order that the emails came in. There was probably, I think, 10, 20, 30, 1,000 different reasons that I wanted to make it for myself. Another one was keeping track of all the email addresses.
Yes, because there were a few different ones, weren't there?
Yes. So there's one big comment that I see going around constantly, which is we don't know what emails Salts has.
Yep.
We don't know what she gave him.
Yep.
So one thing I wanted to see was, which email addresses were the emails that are referenced in Lori-Ann's declaration. What email addresses did they come from, or what email address did Brown send those to maybe give us an idea that Salts is aware of. So for example, Salts is aware of the SUM email address because we know that email is referenced in her declaration.
Right.
That doesn't mean Salts has access to all of the SUM emails, but I feel like we could probably assume that he may have access to most, if not all of them. Assuming that everyone's acting in the best faith possible, I suppose.
Well, everyone's impressed so far with your thoroughness, poppy seeds. So that's a lot of comments. So it's on my screen. So that's my screen you can see. And I've got it as big as I can make it at the moment, trying to keep everything in context. So why don't we start at the top of it? So we've got, the other thing is it looks like there are certain days, so now that you've got them in order, that there are like the first few emails are all the same email address, and then it changes again, and like it seems to change email addresses each section, doesn't it?
That's what I noticed as well.
1 to 10 is one address, and then we've got 16, 19, and 20 is another email address, and then 24, 25 right through down to the next section is another one. So there seems to be a pattern with the addresses, isn't there?
Yes. Yes, it is something I noticed as well going through it, is that it seemed that Lori-Ann switched emails periodically, but would email from the same address for multiple exchanges. It's not always the case. Sometimes there's a bit of an intermix of email addresses, but for the most part, you'll see that it starts with the Comcast email address, it switches, then there's a bit of back and forth between some new emails, say the LB email and Lori A. Then we see most of the SUM emails.
Yeah.
Then I think the bulk of the correspondence is with the B Lori email address.
Right. Yeah. And then there's a Cara email address.
And then it ends with the Cara email address. And there's a few minor ones in there as well that show up for an email or two.
Yeah.
And I found that those emails were usually most useful in identifying where we have missing correspondence.
Right.
So, for example, there is an email where Brown responds. Let's see if I can find it.
So I've just posted the link again, but the link for this is all on is pinned to the top of the chat. So we'll try and give you email numbers and everything so that you can find it all.
Yeah. So for example, you'll see it email 14, which is on the first page.
Yeah.
And that's the emergence of the SUM email address.
Yep.
But what you'll notice is that Brown is the one emailing.
Yes.
Which indicates that there's either an email that's missing or Lori-Ann gave him that email address over a phone call.
Right.
So just something I thought was worth noting.
But that's really interesting, isn't it? Because he's saying that because we don't have, as far as we know, there's been no submission of telephone conversations because in my dealings, there was always, the lawyers would always write down a summary of telephone calls. Is that something that happens still, generally?
Yes, file noting, very important.
Yeah, file noting, yeah.
It's the easiest way to protect yourself from a negligence or malpractice claim. I would consider a lack of file notes to be a sign of bad lawyering.
And file notes wouldn't need to be submitted to the court as evidence, or would he be best to do it? Would he have been better to put that file note in to give us that train of, or is it okay not to have?
I don't think it would be worth including a file note at this point, just because it's not really, I don't think it would add any particular weight. It's more useful if you've got a complaint from, say, a client or a party making a complaint against you, and then you've got a copy of the file on record and all of the conversations. But in a lawsuit like this, what someone has written in a file note, it's not necessarily going to add that much weight. Especially
except we're curious. Except we'd like to know.
Except we're curious, of course.
we want to know. We want to know how he got that, how he knew to email that email address.
Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful if all of the phone calls were recorded and uploaded for us to listen to.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, so for now, I suppose all we've got is just some signs within the emails that we do have.
Yeah.
That indicate that either a phone call happened or an email has been left out for whatever reason.
Okay. Wind Whispers says we'll be chose Charlie's Angels and investigate. So with that whole lot of emails, because there is 3 pages worth of emails between, and I know that in the 2 last motions that he's filed, Brown was saying he wasn't he wasn't LA's lawyer, and then he was. I mean, it's an awful lot of emails when you're not representing somebody, isn't it?
It is.
Or is it because he was trying to get her on Katie's side to submit something for her? Yeah, I mean, it just seems to be an awful lot of email without having something in writing to say whether they represent her or not.
Yes, my feeling reading the emails is that Brown's interest is more so what can Lorianne do for Katie?
Right.
Not so much what can I do for Lorianne. I don't get the feeling that Brown is particularly interested in taking on Lorianne as a client in the emails. It seems that his interest is more so limited to how she can act as a witness for his side of the case.
Right.
Up to interpretation and, the local rules as to, whether this email chain would indicate a constructive attorney-client relationship. My personal feeling is you probably in a lot, it's probably a gray area. But based on what we've got, I personally don't think that there's any sort of clarity or even an impression that one or both sides feels that there was an attorney-client relationship.
Okay. Yeah.
There is one email which is quite late in the exchange. I'll see if I can find it.
Is that where he says, I will go into bat, or I will file it for you or something? Is that the email you're talking about?
It is around there. It's in relation to the subpoena.
Yeah, here. Numbers is around the 114.15 subpoena, legal advice, attorney representation. That's 115.
Yes, so in email 118, which is on the second page. On the second page.
Yes, second page.
So they're talking in this email. They're talking about the subpoena, which hasn't been. So I suppose there's some background. Salt's issued or served a subpoena on Brown to hand over certain communications. The subpoena also applied to Lori-Ann. So it was a subpoena that was issued to both of them. The back and forth was that Brown had received it, but Lori-Ann hadn't officially been served the subpoena at that point in time. Brown was just sharing a copy of it with her. So there's a lot of back and forth about, what this subpoena is asking for. When is she going to get served? Has she been served yet? And in email 118, which is 2 days before the all communication starts to break down. Lori-Ann actually suggests that she's going to reach out to her local legal services for assistance. My view on it was that is an indication that she didn't feel like Brown was her representing attorney.
Okay, yep.
I don't see anywhere in the emails where she's asking him for specific advice regarding her interests. If anything, most of the emails are, one-liner back and forths asking about how can I scan a document? Does the wrong Lori-Ann know that she's been named in this lawsuit? Have you heard back from the Attorney General? Does Salts know? Just a lot of just blah, 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 back and forth. Nothing that's particularly substantive. But the substantive emails, and the reason I was interested in email number 118 is because it's fairly late in the exchange. It's it's over 2 weeks after they started emailing, and 2 to 3 days before she cuts communication. So if more than 2 weeks in, or 90% of the way through their email exchange, she's still talking about finding outside legal representation, my impression was that she didn't feel at that point in time that Brown was representing her.
Okay, and then in 122, which is later on that same day, Brown offers to assist with the response.
Yes.
Is that right?
So, yes. So he, so she says that she might go to her local legal services for assistance. Brown says to her, I don't think you really need to hire a lawyer to respond to a subpoena, which is true. It's, you're not a party to a lawsuit or anything. There's no inherent need for a lawyer. Best practice to get one usually. But he's telling her in that exchange that she doesn't necessarily really need to hire a lawyer, and that he'd be happy to help her pull together a response.
Right. And so that's where we get to that grey area. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say so. I think one of the things that has come up with a lot of the other commentators is that the conflict of interest, or a potential conflict of interest, hasn't been addressed by Brown in the emails, or the back and forth exchanges with Lori-Ann, which is quite important if you're going to be providing assistance to someone who is related in some way to an existing client. You need to make sure that there isn't a conflict of interest there, and that's partly why he's now in this kerfuffle and this sort of bad spot now, where because she's run to the other side and there's a grey area relationship, it makes it difficult in justifying what his position is, with her and with Katie. So it's definitely a grey area. Probably should have handled it a bit more formally. I can see why he kept it informal, given the length of the emails and just how many there's been so far. So I can
Right.
definitely see why he was treating it more informally. But this is one of the reasons why, you do your continuing legal education. So our mandatory education and learning hours that we have to do, one of the things that's drilled in, and it'll be drilled into us until the day that we die, is that you need to make sure that your position with whoever you're corresponding with is really clear. If you're not their attorney, you need to make it really clear that you're not their attorney, so that there's no confusion or grey
Right.
area, I
Yeah.
suppose, to think otherwise. Because most of the time, the way it's interpreted is that the lawyer is the one who is expected to know, and the onus is on the lawyer to make sure that the lines of the relationship are clear. So usually any grey is inferred against the lawyer, or Brown in this case.
Yeah. 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 Harmony is a law student in the US, so she's I think she's nearly qualified. But she was saying that by Brown saying he would write everything for her for free, that becomes the conflict of interest. So, and yeah. So Peter said, I wonder if any missing emails had Laurie saying she was going to Salts. It's a good question. We don't know, do we? We'd like those. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd love to know what happened on the phone, and we'd love those missing emails to fill in those gaps. Now, there was something that's you've written. So for everybody that's got the documents in front of you, if you look at number 126, and Poppy Seeds, you alluded to this last night, that you thought that Laurie-Anne had read the court documents from the Dropbox. So
Yes.
126. Hi, Bibbly Bobbly Boo. If you want to, there's a pinned message. If you want to download the documents, we're just about to look at 126. So Poppy Seeds said last night in chat that it looked like Laurie-Anne had read the documents from the Dropbox from IMF and Raken, which is it starts to be about around the time that she does her flip.
Yes. So on the 10th of January, Laurie-Anne sends Brown an email saying that she's feeling rather upset, and this is from the Cara email address. Seems to be sort of going through it a little bit. She's just found the time to actually go through and read all of the court filings for the very first time, is what she indicates in her email. And what she refers to is saying, so she went to someone's Twitter, and the name of the person is redacted in the email. And they refer to this person she refers to this person as a she. So essentially saying, I went to so-and-so's Twitter. She has a file of all of the court documents. I've just read them for the first time. My initial thought when I first read that was that she might, maybe she's talking about, say, for example, Emily D. Baker, who we know maintains a file, a document outlining all of the court documents and goings on. So I thought maybe she was talking about her. Then following some conversations I've had, it appears that what she's actually referring to is a Dropbox that I'm fucking Raken has on her, who's pinned to her Twitter profile. But by all accounts, it appears that this is the first time that Laurie-Anne has actually read any of the court documents, including the now, I suppose, infamous Katie declaration where she says, "Me and Laurie-Anne were never friends," which is currently what everyone assumes was the cause.
Because we assumed, everyone's just assumed it was she saw the video, because that timeline has flicked. But if she's actually read the documents, she would have already started wondering about it.
Yes, and this is, I suppose, a difficult thing, is that all she says she's read the filings. She doesn't actually say anywhere in the email chain, Katie said we're not friends or anything like that. The only time we actually see her start talking about that is in the declaration that Salt's filed for her.
Yeah.
What happens in the email chain after this, where she said, I've read the documents for the first time. At first, it starts to be a fairly standard back and forth. Brown is telling her that we're preparing a response, and I'd really like to, cover how you've been treated by Salts and how everything has affected you. There's a bit of back and forth about the Kim Fulmer declaration, which is the first one that sort of, I suppose, really named Lori-Ann as a person who was involved to some extent, and is what set off the whole wrong Lori situation, and how Lori-Ann, a lot of it was about how Lori-Ann has been harassed by people since that declaration was filed, and that's essentially what that back and forth is. Lori-Ann is sort of responding to it, saying yes, and here are some additional screenshots that are relevant. And then at some point, Lori-Ann, the tone of her emails start to shift. I have some personal opinions on that, but I didn't really want to speculate as to what her frame of mind was.
Yeah.
Because I can't do anything more than speculate. But I know it seemed like the tone of her emails had shifted between the early afternoon when she had told Brown that she'd read the filings to the early evening. So she tells Brown that this is an odd email. She says something to the effect of, actually, it's much bigger than like it seems. Me and her have been Facebook friends, and that's why Salts has been after me since May. And then she says, I've only been close to one person throughout all of this. And the thing that was odd about the email is that it almost seems like she's referring to two different people.
Right.
So it could be two different females that she's referring to. It could be one, but it's really unclear who she's talking about. And Brown actually doesn't know who she's talking about either. So in a number of his responses to her, he's asking her who she's talking about. But at the same time, she's also emailing him things saying, so she ends one email saying, it's actually bigger than that. We were Facebook friends and I was really close and I told her a lot of things, and now Salts has been coming after me since May. They're making me out to be the violent person. And then she says something about, and then at the end she says, does Lori-Ann, the other Lori, know?
Yeah.
And then she follows it up afterwards saying, or did you already know that? And then another email after that saying, unfortunately, I see who the slime ball is now.
Yep. So we're up to email 134. Sorry. So yes. Email 134 was, unfortunately, I see who the slime ball is now. So
yes. So I suppose this email exchange is really from emails 126 down to the end, so down to 148. But
Yep.
we'll note that these are all taking place on the same day. Emails 126, which is where she says I've read everything for the first time, is at 4:52 p.m. And then 10 emails later, where she's saying, or 5, 6, 7 emails later, where she's saying I know who we were Facebook friends, and then I know who the slime ball is, and I'm going to call him tomorrow. Happens within 3 hours of that. So that's all sort of quite rapid. And then Brown sends Lorianne an email responding to her original, I think like an early 6 p.m. email. So his email at 135 is actually responding to her email 131.
Yep.
So 132, 133, 134, the emails where she's saying, I know who the slime ball is, I'm going to call him tomorrow. And
so what's interesting is that she mentions, so from 4:52 when she says she read the documents until what? Until 9:22. A lot happened in that time, didn't it?
Yes.
So
a whole lot happened in that time.
Was when she said 126, email 126 for those of you that are following at home. Jennifer, there is a link at the top that you can download. So 126 at 4:52 p.m. She says that she'd read the court documents, and then the last of that day, Brown at 9:22, where Brown's really confused by the emails, and then of course there's one the next day. But there's a lot that's happened in that. So it seems like in that email correspondence, you said her tone's changed. So she's starting to change direction here.
Yes. So her tone changes from being quite friendly in the earlier emails. She sounds a bit upset, is the feeling I got in her 4:52 p.m. email, saying that I've just read the filings for the first time, I'm a bit overwhelmed. There's a bit of back and forth about the subpoena, and they want to prepare an updated draft statement. And then at around 7 p.m. We get the emails 131 to say 134, where Lorianne is sort of rapid fire, tunneling down. Things seem to be going a bit out of control with how the perception of everything that's going on is happening, where she starts thinking, am I being taken advantage of? Or am I, are you actually a bad actor in this? Do you actually have my interests at heart? Sort of was the vibe I was sort of getting, where she starts to see Brown as potentially a villain, in a sense. Brown responds to her original email regarding the subpoena, and then evidently has seen all of these other emails that she sends him. So this is why we have 3 emails from Brown, one after the other, within the space of about 20 minutes. One where he's just responding to her original email saying, about the subpoena. One asking who she's talking about, who's the slime ball. And then another one saying, I'm really confused about your emails. Can we please connect on a call or have a call to discuss? I'm not really sure what's going on. Which he sends at 9:22.
Yeah.
What you'll see for the exchanges on the from the next day, it really looks like Lorianne has sort of shut down. Brown generally emails her a couple of times asking to connect. On the next day, he's reiterating that we want to file something talking about how they've, which includes how they've treated you. But this time he's saying, it would be really good if you could provide a statement, if we could actually file something from you as well. It seems that he's picked up on the fact that she's quite upset. Then there's some redacted emails, which we don't know what the content of those was. All we have are Brown's responses, but his responses tend to be things like, you haven't done anything wrong. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I believe what you're saying, Lorianne. I don't think, he's trying to reassure her that he's on her side. Of course, we don't know what she said to him in the emails, but he seems to be quite aware that she's turned. Then there seems to be a few phone calls. So you'll see there's on the 11th in the morning. So say email 142, Brown is emailing her after a phone call, and he's quite confused about some of the things she said in the phone call. One of the quotes that he uses, he says to her that he doesn't understand what she means when she says, "We agreed to give them what they want." Speculation from me, it seems that she, just wants to give Saltz what he wants now. Maybe she's just feeling overwhelmed and doesn't want to deal with it anymore. She just wants it to be over, and she just wants to give them what they want. But Brown evidently isn't really sure what she's actually talking about. And there's seems to be a couple of phone calls after that one, because then in the email that Brown sends to her in the afternoon, the tone has come a bit more back to normal, I suppose, where he's reassuring her that, she's not in any legal trouble. It would be really, and this is where we get that quote, which is it would be great if you could, say that you felt threatened by Saltz in your statement. Then there's a response back that we don't see. And then it's sort of a few redacted emails back and forth, back from Lorianne there. And then that's where it ends. That's the last we hear of it. And then that's the 11th of January. The 12th of January, we know she spends 12 hours or 11 or 12 hours on the phone with Saltz. So that's the next day. And then the following day after that, on the 13th of January, is when the declaration is filed.
Yeah. And it's interesting that's only that last day that there are redacted emails. So up until that, she seemed to be there's a couple, but most of them made it in. But it's on this last day, the day before, where there is a whole chunk of emails where she's obviously unsure, and he's trying to reassure her that they're all the redacted emails. So it's just very interesting. And you did put down here that does indicate a small number of emails include sensitive information relating to her mental health. So it's just interesting that all happened. Those redacted emails happened just before she went to Saltz.
Yes. So there was in docket number 60, Brown refers to, and that is the docket number 60, I believe, is the declaration in relation to the request for sanctions. Brown indicates in that declaration that he provided a number of emails that included sensitive health information relating to Lorianne to the court, which were filed under seal in dockets 52 and 53. And then in the email chain and the filings that we've got, the only indication of an email within the chain that was submitted, or emails, under seal was email number 121, which was on the 8th of January, which was filed under seal.
Yeah.
So it seems that email or that email exchange may include some information relating to her mental health. But of course, that's speculation. We don't actually know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if all of the other redacted emails have also been included there as well.
Right. So everyone's saying a great document there. So has anyone got any questions? Peter, I think Blanco, I think he's the Washington Council. So Salt's is working on the case, but Blanco's the Washington, he's the one that's registered in Washington. That's my understanding. So that's my understanding of it all. Is that your understanding?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why Brown would have emailed him regarding the sanctions and stuff, because you've got the two Washington lawyers working. So anyone got any questions? Remember that we're not going to speculate onto everything that is here is what's come from the documents. We're not gonna speculate on the bits that are missing. Cannot stand it when the lawyer doesn't get their way. They are mentally ill and can't be relied on for truth or facts. Yeah. All right. Well, yes, this is very interesting that a lot of people have said that Brown seemed to be happy with Lori-Ann when he was going to file something for KJ, but then saying because she flipped that she had to be unstable. But there's got to be stuff in that redacted email chain to have come to that conclusion, I guess. Yes, I guess he would know a little bit more of her mental state than the rest of us, I think.
Yes, so in Brown's initial response, so in it's docket 43, and those attachments, essentially what he's saying in response to the accusations made in Lori-Ann's declaration is that Lori-Ann's mental health barely came up when they were speaking and communicating, essentially saying, I didn't there wasn't a lot of back and forth about her mental health struggles in our correspondence. Please see attached the bulk of our correspondence, which shows this, aside from some specific information, which he indicates, or he seems to indicate in there, is, serious, I suppose, something to be noted, but not something that he at the time seems to have felt was made her unreliable as a witness. My feeling was that his belief that she was unreliable probably stems in part from the fact that we can see at the end of their email correspondence that her tone has shifted. It seems that she I don't want to speculate too much about her, how she was feeling, but it was pretty evident to me that the tone and how she was communicating changed quite a lot. And then you take that along with the fact that immediately after that, she's on the phone with the other attorney for 11 hours and then filing a declaration the very next day, that his feeling would be, it doesn't seem like she was in the right mental state to be, to be submitting a declaration that quickly. And that his feeling was that Saltz probably should have handled it better. why Salts submitted a declaration so quickly, we can only speculate. I mean, some will say that Salts is, acting in bad faith and being unprofessional. It's also entirely possible that Lorianne told Salts that Brown was about to file a declaration that she'd prepared with him and she didn't feel like it was accurate, so they had to move quickly, and that might be why they submitted it so fast, to sort of get it in there first. We just don't know.
Well, we don't know. So Gail's asked the question, are you able to, yes or no, have you ever seen such a mess?
In my area of law, yes.
your
area of law is quite different.
Yes.
Yeah, my area of law is not quite as court based. I deal primarily with the government. So there is mess, but it's more government mess and not so much private parties mess. The one thing I felt was is highlighted quite a lot in this back and forth and everything that's been going on, not only with Lorianne's declaration, but how some of the other declarations and witnesses have been handled. Is that a problem that I'm sure a lot of you can see or probably feel, is that there are issues in how the legal community interacts with people who have mental health issues or people who are dealing with mental health struggles. A lot of lawyers, myself included sometimes, have quite can have quite black and white thinking. Is what you're telling me useful to me? And isn't necessarily thinking, is what they're telling me, or how is what they're telling me going to affect them? And I think it really exposes that the way that the legal community interacts with people with mental health struggles can be quite problematic. I feel that probably both sides could have handled this better. It seems that this is the sort of thing that happens when people who are vulnerable are sort of used in legal proceedings in a way that doesn't necessarily take into account the toll that it can take on them. It seems that, say, Lorianne specifically, it seems like she just wants to do the right thing. She seems very concerned about this other woman who's been named wrongly, and she's very focused in the emails about the impact on her and how she feels very guilty that she may have contributed to this other woman being pulled into something so terrible. So it seems that Lorianne, for the most part, probably had really good intentions and is now in this situation where, what she has been communicating to both sides is now under a lot of scrutiny. To some extent, if you get yourself involved, then that's, you get yourself involved and that's what happens. But on the other side of things, when vulnerable people interact with the legal system, the result is often not good for the vulnerable
It can be very
person.
messy, can't it?
Yeah.
And so I think we've seen that in this we're seeing that in this matter as well. Okay, so would the 11 hours of initial communication with Saltsy need to be officially declared? There's heaps of info that is missing.
It seems that the 11 hours was recorded, so it seems that Salts has a full record of that phone call, but that's not something that we are able to see. I'm sure they could provide it to the court if they needed to, and I'm sure that if the judge finds all of this interesting and actually thinks it's relevant, as we all know, she might not give two hoots about any of this, and I might be giving it more interest than the judge does, and that's fair. But if it's something that the judge finds interesting, that's definitely that 11-hour phone call is something that'll definitely come into play. Whether we ever know what exactly went on there, I doubt.
Yeah. Okay, so hello, Mrs. Care, for coming in. Everyone that's just joined us, we're with Poppy Seeds, who is an Australian lawyer who wanted to try and piece together a timeline of the email events. So it's pinned at the top of the chat, and she's designed this beautiful spreadsheet, and where everything is outlined, and we can sort of try and see a timeline. So does anyone else have any questions with Poppy Seeds? This has been really, I hope it's all been, Rick's just woken up. You missed it all, Rick. Yeah, so it's in at the top. So anyone else got any questions about this? Oh, look, it's apparently it's a masterpiece, Poppy. Poppy Seeds.
Thank you.
Sorry. You're getting very good. I must say it's made a lot more sense to me being able to read it, and the fact that it's in order, as you said, definitely helps.
Yeah, I think one of the struggles that I had originally was, I'm fairly detail oriented, ignoring the odd typo that I make when I write things online. But one thing I really had a problem with going through all of the filings was not really being able to contextualize the communication. So I wanted to know, what, not only what was said, but when was it said? How does it relate to the other goings on in the case? So, what filings would she, would have been available when? Yeah. One of them was there was a lot of speculation that Laurie had read or seen the way where we were never friends declaration, and that's what set her off. And so something I wanted to see was, okay, when did that happen, and was there any impact on the tone of her emails? When did that shift occur? When do things actually start to happen, and is there any indication of why she decided to go to salts from the emails?
Yeah.
And it was just very useful to me personally to be able to have them laid out that way. And I thought if it would be helpful to someone else, then cool. That's why I shared it.
All right. Dutch Spirit has written a question, but I know English isn't Dutch's first language. But how much chance is there Laurie Ann will be deposit? Is it deposition or
deposed?
Deposed, yeah.
Well, I think that's probably more of a US, procedural question, which I'm not personally familiar with. A lot of people think none of this is relevant, and that, we, as in myself, are just looking into it too much and are just a bit too obsessed.
Yeah.
And that's possible. If the judge says, I don't care about any of this, it can get tossed. But my feeling is, personally, if the judge accepts jurisdiction, then some of the claims that were made may potentially come up later on. For example, if one of the claims is Katie asked me to do things for her, then it's sort of going into, you had in, you were specifically targeting, or like you were making a concerted effort to dig up information or frame things about, say, Tati in a certain way. So to that extent, it shows, the level of involvement, not necessarily about, this happened in Washington and it sticks just to jurisdiction, but it potentially can also go to Katie's general intentions.
Yeah. The mass flagging and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, what is Katie's character like? Is Katie generally a terrible person out to smear? Or is she just someone who likes to comment about people's personal lives on the internet? And the Lorianne Declaration frames her in a particular way, and I think that would potentially be something that comes up down the line. I don't see why, why there wouldn't be scope to pull her into a deposition. But having said that, a US and Washington attorney would probably be better suited.
Yes, that's right, because Poppy's an Australian lawyer. Someone else said, no, we haven't got anything on jurisdiction. We've just it's all about just trying to piece together the puzzle. It's just trying to put the pieces together. Question by lawyers about the difference in the filings from KJ and Lorianne. Wait on. Dutch. Brown never filed his, therefore it doesn't really matter. Oh, yeah, the two filings. She never signed it, therefore it is voided. That's okay. That's all right, Dutch. So Dutch is saying they've got to translate everything to English. We worked really hard. So Harmony, that question about, as I said, Lorianne being deposed, are you able to answer that? Yeah. Sorry, Poppy, I cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. With the deposed one, I think someone who's a US attorney will be much better suited to answer.
I think about the unsigned
is that some of the allegations that she made could make her a person of interest to be deposed in relation to Katie's character, which I think could be, relevant.
Okay, and I think the difference between the unsigned and the signed declaration, I think, is where Dutch Spirit's going with that. Because Harmony said, Brown never filed his, therefore it doesn't really matter. But he's talking about his is the truth and the one that she signed isn't.
Yeah, I've got a particular opinion on this, which is not an opinion that I know there's a lot of disagreement on. My feeling is that Brown is not actually asking the court to believe his version or his original declaration. What he's trying to do is point out that there's such a huge discrepancy in the facts between the two. So not just the tone, but the actual facts contained therein. And then supported by the emails, which show that, he didn't write it for her and put words in her mouth. That the draft was consistent with what she told him, that he's arguing that they're so different that it indicates that there is an impeachment angle, where he's saying that the judge shouldn't consider the filed Lorianne declaration either or give it weight because Lorianne has given such inconsistent accounts to the legal party or to the parties on both sides. That's the feeling that I get.
Because
all he's trying to do is wipe out any weight that filed declaration might carry with it.
Harmony agrees with you there, because Lorianne actually emailed her own statement to Brown, which he then typed up, which is in the emails. So she actually wrote it herself. And then what's been filed from what she said in her signed declaration is completely different to that.
Yes, and I don't even necessarily think that on its own is sort of really the problem, because Lorianne could say, factual or not, that I felt really close to Katie and I really wanted to help her, but I started feeling bad that the declaration that I was going to sign might be misleading, and I just wanted to tell the truth, and so I went to Salts and we filed an accurate declaration. That could have been something that she did, and I think you'd probably be fine with that. I think it might even be hard to argue with that explanation. But I think where she runs into problems is that the declaration also includes all these allegations against Brown, which, at least from the emails that we've got, are not accurate, and at least from where I'm sitting, imply that there's intentional misleading. It's intentionally trying to mislead or give off an impression that Brown acted in an improper way, when the communications indicate that Brown was actually just trying to frame what she had told him in a way that would make sense in a court document.
Yeah. But what about what Brown's saying to Laurie Ann in the emails we have not seen, and he purposely admitted from any filings? That's what we don't know. We don't know what's in them because they've been redacted. They've been sealed. So the judge, so with sealed documents, the judge and the lawyers get to see them. Is that how it works?
Yes. So with the sealed document, it generally just means that the public can't see it. So it's not in the public's interest to see it. And so things like private medical information, that sort of thing, you generally wouldn't see, because there's no public interest aspect to it beyond just exposing someone's private business. I suppose my thought on the emails that we don't have, I suppose to Brown's credit a bit, is that he seems in his declarations quite forthcoming about what emails have and haven't been included. So in his exhibits, where I've actually indicated, say, redacted or sealed email, it's actually something that he indicated was a redacted or sealed email in his exhibit. It's not something that I just sort of found independently from that. And then in some of his other declarations, he actually makes reference to how many emails were exchanged. So what you'll see see if I can find it. It's on page 2. It's note number 3, underneath email number 86. So what we've got in the public filings are 42 emails exchanged on the 6th of January. Brown later states, actually in the same declaration, Brown actually states that there were 53 emails exchanged. So we know that there are 11 emails that are not in the filings. So he doesn't look like he's tried to hide that. He's openly said there were 53, and then he's attached 42. What those other 11 say, we don't know.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something that he would be able to provide to the court, and it wouldn't do him any favors to provide, to sort of hide emails that directly contradict what he's included. And then we also have to remember that if there are emails which tell a very different story to what Brown has included, Lorianne also has those emails. So she could just as easily say, well, actually, you've left out these critical emails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to however many. It's hard to know exactly how many emails were exchanged. Brown makes reference to a whole different amount of numbers. So in one filing, he says 80. In another, he says at least 100. The largest number I see is around 150. Just based on the breakdown here, there was more than 150. There was probably at least 160 plus. So it's hard to know exactly how many that we're missing, but it doesn't seem to me that Brown's been trying to hide emails, I suppose.
Okay, so the question about would that info Brown gathered from within those emails can be considered privileged, and if so, wouldn't that stop him from cross-examination?
I would say that's a question for a US attorney.
A US question, all right, yeah. That's right. All right, let's have a look what else we've got.
I suppose it's possible that he would make the argument that I was never representing her. There was no client-attorney relationship, so there's no client-attorney privilege. And then he might also say, she's already stated in her declaration that she's willing to provide copies of all of the email correspondence to the court, and that he's taken it as, well, that's permission for me to provide them to the court.
Okay. So Harmony says, personally, if she was the judge, she hates to say it, but she'd tell Salts to find another witness.
The interesting thing was there's actually 2 other witnesses in Washington. They're
That's
included
right.
in the December filings.
That's right.
No, it's 3. It's 3. It's Kim Fulmer, Macy Storm, and Hope Walker. So there's at least 3 others. Kim keeps getting pulled up because she's the origin of Lori-Ann in the case, but Macy and Hope, are just getting on with their lives, and they said I was a watcher in Washington. It seems that the point of including Lori-Ann is to really push the agency argument. Not only were there watchers in Washington and subscribers in Washington, we'll go even further and say that Katie specifically, engaged people to act on her behalf in Washington to further tie her to the jurisdiction. And I think that's what the Lori-Ann Declaration is really trying to push, or that's what the purpose is for Salts in pulling Lori-Ann into it.
Yeah. Yes, so there were those 2 other witnesses that we've all forgotten about because all the emphasis has been put onto Lori-Ann because of this agency thing. What else is there?
Nikki's asking if Lori-Ann had privilege. I think that's up for debate.
Up for debate.
That's a big one at the moment, which is why we've seen the request to be qualified as counsel, because now there's concerns about,
because I think Nikki came in late. We did question that there was that one email that caused that grey area. Didn't we?
I mean, there's a few that I think are a bit interesting in, and they're generally keyworded as legal advice.
Yep.
Whether it's general legal advice or specific legal advice is sort of up to you, or up to the US attorneys out there. But, something that we all learn in law school and, in our continuing legal education is that you have to be really careful about what advice you give to people. And you've also got to be really careful about making it clear that what you're telling someone isn't legal advice, and making sure that it can't be construed as directed legal advice. because almost every time, if it's unclear, it's going to be inferred against you.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every time.
And so that's why he's now done that thing to remain on the case, because he's realised that this one, these few emails,
So one of the problems when you just file things rapid shot is that you don't necessarily think in the moment what the impact of one filing is going to be on something else. And it looks like, the impact on the whole back and forth of Salt should have known or believed that there was a relationship there is now that there's opened questions. Well, was there a relationship there?
Mm-hmm.
Are your emails sufficiently clear that there was no relationship? And, what sort of conflict has now arisen? Did you have a conversation with Lorianne indicating that there was, there is a potential conflict, that you're also representing the interests of Katie, and then, where those interests between the two of you may differ. If you're in that sort of position, sometimes you just have to step away. Other times, if both parties consent and are made aware that there is a potential conflict, but they consent to that, that's fine. But you need to have that conversation, and it needs to be clearly documented, which the only reference to any potential conflict that I've seen in the email chains is right at the start, where Brown says to Lorianne, and I don't know that I think it's in the keyword somewhere, but it's not pink, is that Katie's happy for me to help you with preparation of a statement, that's fine if you're just preparing a declaration as a witness. I'm sure that's probably the kind of conversation that Salt's had with Macy and Taupe.
Mm-hmm.
But 150 plus emails later,
it's a lot of emails. It's a lot of emails for no result, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of emails for what has ended up really backfiring.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, Jennifer, and that's where, and don't forget, a lot of the stuff's redacted towards the end, so we don't know how much she has disclosed to him. And Gail, to answer your question, that will be up to the court to decide, I guess, whether she's made a false declaration or not. But that's, there is one thing I don't understand from Brown. He's asking Salts for money, but email chat says free of charge. Yeah, so that's for filing for the. Yeah, so she's trying to work out
free of charge to Lorianne.
Yep. But now
but not free of charge to Katie.
Yeah. So Katie's still got to pay for it. So Katie's had to pay for filings. So that's where the money's coming from. I hope that makes sense, actually.
So the comment that he's making where he says, I'll help you free of charge, it seems that he's actually referring to responding to the subpoena. Not so much in preparing the declaration. It seems that the preparing of the declaration is just something that Katie is going to be responsible for cost of. If you want a witness to provide a statement that is beneficial to you, good luck finding a witness who's like, and I'll also pay all of the costs associated with that. Rack off. There's no way I'm going to pay to be a witness in your lawsuit. So, in relation to the declaration, KJ would definitely be paying for that. But in terms of responding to the subpoena, Brown says, you don't really need to hire a lawyer for that. And I'm willing to help you prepare a response, and I won't charge you for it.
So that's also an interesting point to clear up. So it wasn't to file the declaration per se, it was to handle the subpoena. So again, it just puts it into a different perspective, because if you read the stuff as it's filed, is there a reason why it was all filed out of order? Or is it generally that they like things in order?
Well, I suppose in going back to the, whether his comments relate just to the subpoena, he doesn't do himself any favors because he talks about them both in the same email. So he's sort of saying, I want to stand up for you, which makes sense in that it would, be referring to the declaration. But then he's also saying, I'll help you in addressing the subpoena and I won't charge you for it. Because the tone, a lot of the back and forth with the subpoena is that she's very concerned that she hasn't been served, how does service work? Is the other Lorianne receiving it instead? So there's a lot of concern about how that process works. And that's also where we get into the back and forth about her right to object to the subpoena, and whether he's telling her that she should object, whether he's telling her to not cooperate. Where he's essentially saying you have the right to object if you want to delay things, I suppose.
Right, yeah.
But he doesn't separate it that well in the emails. He kind of just talks about it back and forth, all intermixed, which I think creates a few problems for him.
Yeah, so Dutch, yes, KJ's paid KJ would have paid for Brown for preparing that declaration. So I think is it early March? I think we're due 21 days from the filing of is when the salts is due. Rick's saying you're making a lot of sense, so that's good. Bibbly bobbly boo, yes, that's where the grey area is. So that's what Poppy's explaining, that it's a very grey area. And even if he was not charging, it could be deemed that he was representing her.
Yep, there doesn't need to be fees involved for there to be a client-attorney relationship. You'd get those, no win, no fee arrangements. In some cases, I think it's probably a bit more common in the States. And then, as someone mentioned, there are pro bono arrangements as well. So the exchange of funds or the agreement to exchange funds doesn't need to come into it at all. It's a completely separate issue. That often comes up in, is the lawyer entitled to get paid? And the first question is, well, did you have an agreement? Was it signed? And if the answer is no, then a lot of the time it's like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's next week, Harmony. I think sometime next week we're supposed to have something done. So hello, Nana Kimber.
Sometime in early March.
Yeah, sometime in early March, yes. So are you any closer to feeling like you have a better understanding of how it's all happened, or is it still a little bit wondering? Poppy?
Well,
yeah.
I feel like I've done part 1 of 20 in the the full analysis of how everything goes. So I've put things in order is sort of where I'm at. And then so this is probably like the 4th version of this document, I think. And in the draft there's like 5 or 10 other columns about so wanting to see potentially if we can figure out what emails Salts had beyond the 9 or so that are specifically referenced, because there's been a lot of discussion. And again, whether the judge cares about any of this is up to the judge, and she might think it's all rubbish and a waste of time. But I've got some spare time at the moment, and something I feel like I want to spend my free time doing. So I want to see, and so a lot of conversation has been about, how Salts acted. Was his filing of the Lorianne declaration reasonable based on the information that he had in front of him. So one of my questions is, well, what information did he have in front of him? And is there any way we can try and figure that out a little bit better based on the information we've got? So that's something I'm still looking at. I think that'll probably take forever. And there's a few other things as well. But yeah, I'm probably like 10% of the way through what I feel like is going from square one to an actual understanding.
Well, and if there's no more filings, then you'll be able to catch up. But if they keep filings, if they keep speeding filings, but I mean, this is only relevant if jurisdiction is in Washington, because Lori-Ann is only relevant because of the Washington connection. If KJ wins jurisdiction, all of this doesn't matter. Like, as far as the case is concerned, Lori-Ann disappears, so to speak.
Yes, and that was my feeling too.
And they need to find new witnesses. So I myself am really baffled. Why is KJ going so, like, why is Brown and KJ going really hard at Lori-Ann if they win jurisdiction?
Well, it's entirely possible they do win jurisdiction, but if they don't win jurisdiction, they don't want to be on the back foot by just letting things slip through. So I suppose their feeling is that in the event we don't win jurisdiction, we want to make sure that we've got objections to their filings on the record.
Right.
Whether now is the appropriate time to do that is, up for debate, I suppose. But, even if you are 100% certain that you're going to win on jurisdiction, it doesn't mean that you don't prepare for the event that you don't. And you don't want to accidentally give them the upper hand because you thought it wasn't going to be important.
And it's also it's also interesting that they have not brought up anything to do with the other two Washington witnesses either. And I guess they're really trying to squash this agency thing.
Yeah, I think the agency thing is the big one. But also I think the reason that they have taken such offense to it is because it's it's included allegations against Brown. And the fact that those allegations they imply that he's behaved really poorly and done the wrong thing. And by extension, it also includes a lot of negative things about Katie Joy. And it's important to them to say, no, that's not true. Whereas the other witnesses effectively just said, I'm a viewer and I'm based in Washington. Thank you very much. It's hard to argue with that.
Mm-hmm.
They're just facts.
Yeah. So that's Gail. Yeah, she did win her last two ones on jurisdictions. So Harmony's saying she thinks it's become more personal for KJ because she turned and said a lot of information about her.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, everything she said in the Salt's declaration is true. Just because it's inconsistent with what she said to Brown doesn't mean it's false.
Well, that's what uncivil law was saying. She could actually be telling the truth in both. In some ways, because in her, that's what the truth was.
I mean, it might be her truth in the moment. Whether it's objectively the truth, I don't know. But yeah, it's a difficult one. I personally think that the best thing for Lori-Ann would be for this case to be dismissed on jurisdiction.
Yeah.
That way she can get on with her life. And that would probably be the best thing for her, to just put this behind her and move on. Everyone wants KJ to lose and to, get what's coming to her. But I don't necessarily think that, that's in the best interests of Lorianne. But we'll just have to see, I suppose.
I think her channel's been sunk by her own stuff, not necessarily this case. I mean, I saw a snippet of one of her videos today, and she actually cut off a whole word. Like, her editing was really poor, in my opinion. So yeah. Doesn't really matter if she gets it or not. Tutty will just file it in KJ's state, which would just get to the point of defamation, unless KJ tries to say jurisdiction is in California. Okay. So has anyone else got any questions before, and then we can Poppy Seeds can go and relax. How bad that video was? Very bad, Mrs. Kerr. That was very bad. Did you see that? Did you see any of that, Poppy? I saw it on Twitter.
I'm not sure what video this is.
There was a video. It was about, the roll-offs, I think. It was just this very short snippet, and she was saying Freddie was the star of the show and that she doesn't like pillows on, and then she went, it cut, and she went on to the next sentence. So anyway, yeah. All right. So everyone's been saying we are now officially law nerds, says Gail. I think most people have agreed it's helped clarify stuff for them. Is there anything else? Yeah, Nana Kimber's just gotten up. So, Nana Kimber, so if you look at the pin at the top, there's a Dropbox link with the document that Poppy prepared, and it's got all the emails. Couldn't LAB wrote in without WA jurisdiction due to mass flagging, etc. activities? That would be I think that would be a whole different case, wouldn't it? I know that you're not in the US, but for some of those allegations that she's made, that would need to be a completely different investigation.
Yeah, I think it might be going towards, even if it gets filed in KJ state, can they still pull Lorianne into it? In that what she's saying goes towards Katie's character and her intent when doing everything. And I mean, probably. But again, probably a question for a US attorney.
A US attorney, yes.
But I think that's also, another reason that, why Brown, may rightfully be trying to get the declaration sort of wiped out.
Yeah.
Because if the lawyers can agree to wipe it out and to just come to the conclusion that the value of the declaration, noting that there's so much argument about it from both sides and what's true and what's reliable, they're trying to diminish the value of the declaration so that if it does get filed again in another state, they might just say forget it. It's too much effort to be trying to rely on that again. It doesn't add enough weight or enough benefit to outweigh the the cost that it's going to incur as well.
Peter says we're law bogans in Australia.
Law bogans.
Yeah. So if you want to rewatch it, I would recommend having it download and rewatching it, because we did actually refer to it. Good stream. Yeah, Law Bergen. Great job. Can't wait to see clips from this popping up on other channels. Have a feeling it'll be a subreddit. Oh, you're gonna be famous, Poppy Seeds. You'll have to put your retainer up.
That's how I feel about that.
You'll have to put your retainer up. Go to your boss and say you're YouTube famous now.
Yes, I'm sure they'll love that.
I just think it would be funny that he was threatening to take salts to WO, but only to find himself sanctioned for violating client privilege. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't think
We don't know
Brown
yet.
actually threatened to, and that's one of the things that came up in the Lawyer Declaration was that, you know, Brown was pushing her to file a bar complaint against Salts, which Salts says didn't happen. What actually happened was I said, this is something you could do, but whether you'll get any relief from it, I don't know, which is fair.
And there was a false complaint made, but that was made in KJ's name. Yeah, with all the hacking stuff. If you remember, there was. Yeah.
So, the hacking stuff is
another whole. That's a whole different conversation. That's right. There's so many little offshoots of this. Like it's really not. It's not really. It's not just a straightforward thing because you've got all these little offshoots because you've got the hacking and you've got L'Oreal and you've got the Nat and and somewhere back there is Tardy and KJ, behind it all. So Nikki says, I think L'Oreal wants to get away as far as possible from the whole debacle after this. Yes. Great live. Yes. So Peter wants to know, can they agree that L'Oreal was a subscriber and sent super chats and that's enough to rebut no subscribers in Washington? Possibly.
I mean, I would say it's an objective fact that there, even in the email exchanges between L'Oreal and Brown, there's discussion about the super chats. There's a back and forth about exactly how much money L'Oreal spent or donated to Katie. So I don't think that's necessarily in dispute. But I believe that the line from Katie originally was that she wasn't aware at that point in time of what her Washington base was. I know some other commentators pointed out the very careful wording, where it's technically I'm not lying, even though what I'm saying may not be true. That doesn't make it a lie.
Yeah.
Is the way that the careful wording game works.
Right. Yep. She did say that she would sanction. She did say that we showed that clip from her Uni Rock live. Okay. Okay. He didn't threaten, but he did tell her, and it's yes, he did say that it was something. Everyone's asking who's Taddy. What's a Taddy? What's jurisdiction? Yeah. She did give her a bit of money. Rick, yeah, what's Tardy? Wait, Tardy?
One thing I did find interesting is that in the entire email exchange, I think jurisdiction comes up twice.
Twice.
And I don't even think it's particularly direct. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, it's just a sort of a random comment about how it's sort of in relation to preparing a statement for her and pushing back against the personal connection between her and Katie. Because I suppose we should remember that in the original declaration that wasn't signed, the view or the story that was being pushed was that her and Katie weren't that close.
She did say that in her unsigned one, didn't she, that they weren't close? Yeah. So that's why I was baffled by why she would.
Yeah, so she's saying, we weren't that close. Katie's never asked me to do anything for her. I don't even know who Tati is. I've never seen any of the videos on it. I don't watch Katie's content for that. Was what they were originally saying. And so the only references to jurisdiction in the emails is just in rebutting that connection, which is, I think, is something that we sometimes forget, because what Lorianne later says is the total opposite of that.
Yeah, and then because we assume that she flipped because Katie said that they weren't friends, but yet she put that in her unsigned declaration. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, and I think we also we do assume that she flipped because of the friend comment.
Yeah.
But that friend comment is not actually inconsistent with the draft declarations that they were preparing. It seems perfectly consistent with the approach that they were preparing for in the email exchange, which was to highlight that they're not that close. So I don't know specifically whether, what impact that actually had. It just seems, and it's also difficult because so many of those emails around that time at the end of the exchange are redacted.
Yeah.
That, potentially something else is what set her off. Maybe she felt like, or maybe it occurred to her that, this was, she was going to get pulled into something. Maybe she felt she was a bit in deep and she didn't want to be that involved, and I don't know, reacted in the worst possible way if that was her intent, because look where we are now. But it definitely seems that her impression of Brown, for whatever reason, changed at the end of the correspondence. So for whatever reason, how she felt about Brown changed. And because of the change of feeling about Brown is what pushed her to go talk to Salts.
Yeah. People were talking about, KJ referred to as a ride and die and all of that, but that's all the stuff that they'd sort out at the deposition.
I also think it's probably a good idea to keep in mind like how people talk on the internet. Every single creator out there has someone who says I'm a ride or die. Every celebrity has someone who says I'm a ride or die. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's a personal and close relationship between the two people. And I think there's been a tendency in some of the commentary to take some of what people are saying really literally. It might just be that Katie is aware that Lorianne is a big fan and likes to engage with her audience and makes her audience feel special to get, named. But that doesn't necessarily mean her and Katie are best friends.
Yeah, there's a difference in pretending not to know someone and then hearing someone say it as fact and harshly. Well, that's true as well. So, versus, as Poppy has said, we don't know what happened in those last 3, 4. Because if we look here, the last 2, 4, there's 6 emails. Only 2 of them were put in. The other 4 are all redacted. So we don't know what's going on in there.
Yeah, and something else I haven't included is there were phone calls in between some of those emails as well.
Yeah.
And we know there were phone calls because they're documented in the emails. I haven't included them separately to show that there are phone calls, just because, there could be phone calls every single day, and I didn't want to highlight any particular phone call more than any other because we don't know what was said. But that last day, there were also phone calls back and forth.
So there were phone calls as well in that last. Was it the 10th or the 11th? The 11th.
Yeah, it looks like he was after her emails on the 10th that end around 8 p.m. She stops responding to him. He reaches out to her again on the 11th, pretty much saying, I think there's been a big misunderstanding. I really think you would feel better if we could have a phone call. I really want to clear this up, is what he says in the email. And then in the next email, it looks like they've had a phone call, and he's saying, I want to reassure you, I do believe you, and I want to clarify what you meant when you said this in our phone call.
Yeah.
So it looks like she cuts him off. He scrambles to reach out to her on the 11th. They have a few phone calls. There's a little bit of back and forth where it looks like it recovers a little bit, and then we've got this spate of redacted emails, and it's game over.
Yeah. So because I'm very much aware there's lots of other stuff, but we're looking at what we were really focusing on. We're looking at what has been submitted as evidence, and so everything that we've based everything on is what's been submitted as evidence. And this is the email chain. Because I know he has talked about how Lorianne, was talking about Katie a lot, but none of that's been submitted as evidence at this point in time. So
yeah, I mean, if Lorianne posted on Twitter like, this is what I think, and this is what I meant when I said this, then that would be great. But as far as I know, she hasn't done that. So right now, it's all just sort of it's all just sort of speculation, or it's things on Twitter that happened before, and it just seems a bit easier to.
And don't forget, this is what the judge is looking at as well. So if the judge was going to sit and read the emails, this is what the judge is using for evidence. So, and as I said, that's why we're saying that we can only talk about what's in front of us. No, it's not. But the trial of public opinion sure does pressure Katie. She knows we know. Of course, she does know that we know. And I would assume that if we get to this, it will all come out in discovery at some point in time. But at the moment, this is honestly, I don't see any of this hitting the light of day in this case. Yeah. Well, as Poppy said, it would probably be the best thing for Lorianne. And this is just her opinion based on what she's with all the work that she's done.
One thing I am very interested to know is not so much who's representing Lorianne, but where I personally want to know where Lorianne or where Lorianne sits now in how she feels about everything. Does she still stand by the Salts Declaration? Does she still feel the same way, or has her opinion changed? And will we ever know? But I do think, if she probably did not expect for things to turn out like they did, probably doesn't want to be involved anymore. And it would probably be the best thing for her if this all just went away and the judge didn't look at it. I have a question for you, Jo.
Yeah, here we go.
What are your thoughts on when the judge drops a ruling on jurisdiction, and do you think the judge will make any sort of statement, or when she might make any statement on the sanctions request?
Well, because I have I'm not a lawyer, I'm just an interested party. So for me, from what I've seen of her, she's no nonsense. She's I know that if I was the judge, if I was presented with all this paperwork, and I had to sit and read it, if I had started to read it and there was more coming, I'd want to keep it. But then I don't really know where, to be honest, I don't really know. I'm sort of sitting on the fence here because I can really see both sides of it. I can see the point of it not being in Washington. I think, although somebody, Rikita Law was saying that the law for journalistic stuff was stronger in Minnesota than Washington, but
yes, I've heard that as well.
But the defamation, for the defamation aspect, it was worse. But look, she will probably. I think she'll keep it because just out of interest and intrigue. But I really don't know. This could go anyway. But then there's a part of me that goes, for Nat and Lorianne's sake, I'd like it to just disappear. So I know I've just done a sit on the fence, no opinion. Because I really would have thought she would have ruled by now, but because there's all these filings, I can just see jurisdiction getting to the bottom of the pile.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. Why hasn't she ruled on jurisdiction yet? She seems quite active. She doesn't seem like the type of judge that would just take her time. She's made it quite clear that she's happy to just progress it. So I'm interested to see why she hasn't just ruled on jurisdiction.
I'd be a great politician, Rick, non-committal, because she could have ruled on, but then the fact that Brown's filed 2 motions after she said no more filings, the petty part of me would go, well, you know what, you're not going to get what you want. But that doesn't abide by the law, if you know what I mean, the petty part of me. I can see that she would be a bit annoyed that there's more filings. But is she deliberately holding off because they're playing games with her? I mean, I don't know.
Yes. One thing I was wondering was, is it possible that she's allowing them to continue filing because she's interested in the sanctions argument?
Actually, Harmony just wrote that. She's loving the tea. She's loving the tea. Yes, well, that's the thing. She's just, I mean, will they exhaust themselves out with filings and then go to sleep so she can rule like 2 little boys?
Yes, absolutely. One thing I was wondering was, is it possible that she already knows what she wants to do with jurisdiction, but she's interested, or she's actively considering what to do with the sanctions motion and wants to sort that out before she actually rules on jurisdiction? So before she just says yes or no, that she wants to finalize that aspect. And that makes me curious as to think, does she want to finalize the sanctions motion, whether she says, no, this is a waste of time, piss off, or she entertains it? Is that because she intends to say, and there's no jurisdiction, so we're getting rid of this, it all ends now? Because she could just rule on jurisdiction and say, yeah, we've got it, and then Salts, you can keep preparing your response. Yes, who just knows? Just a bit of speculation there.
Peter's comment says Babs is secretly interested because Halo Beauty subscriptions due to run out.
I wonder if that would cause a conflict of interest for the judge.
It would cause a conflict of interest for the judge. See, I would be like, Brown, why you asked me to do this or that, but doesn't want me to rule in your favor? Yeah. It's definitely interesting because I actually thought she would have done the jurisdiction when she had them both before her the last time. I thought when she gave them their telling off, she would have said, you know what, I'm keeping this. So let's play ball. And I think the fact that she said that if they couldn't get on, she would bring the court date forward, I thought, well, maybe then she's going to keep jurisdiction.
Yeah, certainly possible.
So Phyllis wants to know what would happen in the Australian courts regarding something like this. Would you like this? This is probably not something that you've had lots of experience in your recent job, in your current job.
Yeah, I'm not a civil litigator or working in defamation so much here. But generally speaking, I don't believe the jurisdiction issue is much. It's not quite as big an issue. A lot of the time, unless it's like, I suppose.
How can someone give this a thumbs down? I thought KJ would have
in
liked
Australia,
it.
I'm much more specialised. What I deal with is essentially just federal law. So similar to, I suppose, uncivil, I operate solely within the federal law area.
Yeah, so you're more of the federal. Yeah. But yeah. So I have to say I was very surprised when she didn't have him before her last time, that she couldn't have ruled at that point in time. That was my.
Yeah, you'd think that she has enough to make a determination on jurisdiction. But who knows? Maybe she wants to see where this Lorian Declaration goes, and maybe the Lorian Declaration makes a difference to how she rules on jurisdiction and the outcome of all this back and forth.
Well, I have to tell you,
as to how she feels about it.
If I had read all of those 500 pages, I'd be wanting to keep it.
Yeah, see, a lot of people feel that way. Personally, I'm the opposite. I would have read all of this and said, I don't want anything to do with this. Oh, I get rid of it. It just comes down to the judge. But I believe she's quite familiar with, I suppose, digital.
Well, she did the parlor case, so
she seems to be quite a good judge for this kind of case. I'd be interested to see, what sort of weight she puts on, if she does decide to keep jurisdiction, what amount of weight she puts on, the subscriber angle, or the viewer angle, or the super chats angle, or the agency angle. Because if it's on agency, then that's that's got ramifications. If it's on subscribers, then
there's ramifications. Yeah.
God forbid you'll be pulling people into lawsuits all over the world.
Well, I think that's a total. Maybe she said stop finding whoever filed first. She would be like going to the other party who listened. I know it's not lawful, but see, I'm saying that like I'm a little bit petty like that. That's what I would be doing. The judge wrote a book on evaluation of digital evidence. So if she wrote a book on the digital evidence, and she's pretty well up there. But yeah, see, I'm a little bit petty like that. That's what I would do. But I that's not the. You can't. Pettiness isn't. You can't make the law through pettiness. I think Brown and KJ knew if they did this nonsense, she would just get sick of it and maybe toss it. Well, maybe that's it as well. Maybe they're hoping that she's going to toss it because of the nonsense.
Yeah, if she's anything like me, I would just be like, I don't want anything to do with this.
But if she's like me, she's going to be petty.
I mean, if she thinks that Brown is being, unprofessional, she might want to just say, no, I'm keeping it. Sorry.
Well, and she did warn them both as well.
It's possible.
And she did warn them both. But yes, so she did say that if they couldn't behave, they could bring the court date forward. And that's when I thought, oh, maybe she's going to keep it.
One thing, I mean, I'm interested to see how she feels about the latest Brown filings. I think the sanctions motion is extreme, but I'd be interested to see how she feels about it, because Brown very specifically mentioned that they had a meeting before he filed it.
Yes, he did. But then, of course, you've got the motion that was invalid that she tossed out straight away. I mean, that would annoy me too as the judge.
Yeah, that was quite a silly thing for him to do. I don't know about, what actual impact that will have on anything. She might just think that was a silly mistake and move on. She might think, this guy is just going overboard and needs to calm down. And it might, make her think lesser of him. Lawyers make mistakes all the time. If it's not a mistake that jeopardizes the case, then it's just something stupid, and it's not really a big deal in the grand scheme of things. You get a slap on the wrist and publicly told you're stupid, and then everyone moves on. So I don't personally think it's as big a deal as some are making it. But again, I'm not a US attorney, and maybe the judge is pissed off.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't know about what she feels about like the paper or anything like that either. But it is an odd mistake, considering it was 9 years prior. And Harmony says, I don't think she'd see it as a silly mistake because he legit put his resume. Yeah. So yeah, so that's what I see on all of this. But I'm just living for the next lot of filings, actually, to see what comes next. The other thing is she could be waiting. Somebody mentioned the hacking. She could be waiting for that outcome as well, because that was something that Zoltzi had said that he was waiting for. It's been amazing having you on, Poppy Seeds. It has been amazing having you on, Poppy Seeds. I want to thank you very much for joining us and helping us make sense of it all. When you've got your next document done, we'll have to have you on to explain that as well.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, when that happens.
We're gonna make
it. Could be tomorrow. Who knows?
Could be tomorrow. Oh. Yeah. See, if she didn't like the paper, she would have said something about it too. But yeah, I mean, there's a number of things why the judge could be waiting for a number of things, but one of them could be the hacking. One of them is to see, what else gets filed.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it comes back that the hacking was KJ, then I think KJ's in big trouble. And I think, that's going to be a huge problem.
Well, then that goes.
That makes sense that she would want to know what the relevance of that is. If the answer is it's not tied to KJ, I think that's as far as it'll go. There's no connection to KJ, and she'll be like, okay, great, okay, we can disregard all of that.
Yeah.
Because it's not relevant.
At the status conference, that was seemed to be big, that somebody was saying that they were working for her, because that was the whole thing with the hackers, is that they were saying that they were working for her, working on her behalf, and so there was this big investigation.
So this is speculation.
Yeah.
So as a reminder, speculation, just our opinions. But do you have any feeling one way or the other as to whether KJ has any involvement in the hacking?
I don't know if it's her. There might be somebody close to her. If we take Nat's declaration as true, Nat said that there was stuff that was revealed that she'd only told KJ, and I don't know how that would get out. This is just, as I said, speculation. How would something get out? Either someone's hacked into KJ's computer and got the information to do it, or it's either KJ or somebody else. But I don't know. It would be really stupid if it was her.
I agree with that.
Gail said she's believed KJ's guilty by association, allegedly. somebody obviously thought that she was aggrieved. I mean, it could be one of her ride or dies, or somebody thinking that they're helping her by putting in the frightness on people. But
if it is someone who is doing it, quote unquote, on her behalf, but not with her permission, is it fair to hold Katie responsible for that?
Well, probably not, unless she was aware of it, of course.
I think this also comes back to some of the conversations and the lives that she did, where, and I think Nat mentions it in her filing as well, where Katie's saying something like, you know, if they're trying to keep you quiet, then, you know, we'll stand for you. And
yes, that's correct. Yeah.
you know, is that Katie in a way approving of the conduct of her you know, of the subscribers that may want to, quote unquote, help her? I feel like it would be really silly if it was her, and I find it really strange that the accounts that are doing the hacking are really open about the fact that they're doing it with Katie's permission.
Yeah,
because although it doesn't seem like that would, that's sort of open witness tampering sort of area. And why would you be public about that? Yes, I publicly consent to people threatening the witnesses. Seems like a very odd thing, and it makes me feel like it's just as possible, if not more, in my feeling, that she's not directly linked to it.
Well, I'm wondering, I mean, I've seen her editing of late, and I go, there's no way she could do it based on her, you know, I don't know that she's got the technical skills. In my opinion, just speculation, because, you know, some of her editing has been really bad.
Maybe I'm giving her too much credit. It's also possible, you know.
But I
don't underestimate incompetence and how
that
often
is true as well, because I'm actually well known for people. I'm well known for playing dumb all the time, and people underestimating me because I deliberately dumb myself down. But that's true. But I do think, though, that it could be linked to that live. Plot twist, it was Lorianne. It will come back to all those emails address speculation. Yeah.
The fact that she has so many email addresses with different names is very strange, and it's never addressed.
No, well, that was the other thing.
Emails with Brown, it's so odd. Like, he just accepts the emails at face value, which I never understood.
Unless it was explained in a phone call, which we don't know about. But
it must have been. Like, you get an email from a Sue M or a Cara, or was there a Katie or something in there?
Yeah, there was some.
Carly.
Yeah.
It just, and what's with, like, there's Laurie A, Laurie B, like, what is the purpose of all of these different emails? It's very strange.
That is very, like, that's got me a bit baffled as well. But then she's trying to say that she was being harassed and doxed and all of that sort of stuff. So would she while it away with that?
Yeah, I think the way for now, I'm just choosing to take it is that if Brown accepted it as face value, then it might just be like an oddity that doesn't really mean anything. It is weird, but it being weird doesn't mean it's anything more than that. But I had a conversation with someone recently, and they were telling me how convinced they are that this is all a big setup between Lorianne and KJ.
I've
that
actually heard
KJ
that theory as
sent
well.
Lorianne to Salt's to make Salt's look bad or make him make mistakes, which personally I doubt it. It's a very expensive plan for KJ
Mm.
to do that. But I mean, I suppose it's not impossible.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that. There's lots of theories going around, really, but I think it'll be traced back to that live, that KJ live, and somebody has taken it upon themselves to do it. So when they're saying we've got Katie's permission, they've taken that live literally. See, Jennifer says she thinks they're all involved. So there's lots of different theories going around, and remember, it's all speculation. It's not fact. We don't know.
I think reading the Nat declaration back, when you've got that there's a theory going around that Nat is behind the hacking, and it's like being in the Twilight Zone, reading her declaration with that theory in mind, because if you believe that, then her entire declaration is her complaining about being harassed by herself.
Mm-hmm. And why would you
which
do
is
that?
just wild. Yes,
Yeah.
and I also know that there's the view that because she's in the UK, can what she said in her declaration actually be trusted? Because, good luck getting her for perjury when she's not even in the United
Well, that's
States.
what, yeah. I've heard this theory that Claire's written as well, that Todd had he's got a background in IT. I've heard that there's lots of theories going around, and just remember that they're all theories. So if it's a criminal investigation and it's with the FBI, we may never find the answer. We may never know until the FBI decides to make it public. So
Yeah, what are the chances of that?
probably we won't. We may not know. I don't know why or what she's trying to. Again, it's all about trying to discredit Salts by saying that him and Emily are working together.
Yeah, I think there's probably some truth to the Katie just disliking Emily for being a somewhat successful YouTuber.
Yep.
Um,
and that's where they've got the fact that they have to be working together, because, and then there's also the fact that Emily got that unfiled document about the case that KJ had broken.
Yes, and there was a lot of confusion at that time about whether it was actually filed or not. And Emily had to clarify that it was just a draft.
It was just a draft, and but she had broken the case, but Emily had got the
real scoop.
Yeah, she got the real scoop. So there may have been a bit of jealousy about that as well. I mean, yes, we've got the deleted videos and all of that. I mean, all of that, again, regardless, that all will come up, if the jurisdiction and it's refiled, all of that will still be relevant. It's just that it's the Lorianne that. But if you see her Instagram account, there are I
think she's talking about Nat.
On Nat, yes. Talking about Nat. Yeah. Can you think of anyone that might want to attack you? Any enemies? She'll talk about all the trolls. Yeah.
The Nat involvement is also something. I suppose it's another case where I think I'm not saying Salts did anything wrong. But as I mentioned earlier, I think that when vulnerable people interact with the law, it's often not to their benefit. And I feel like the involvement of Nat is probably overall not been a net positive for her.
No.
And I wish that Salts maybe had possibly handled it a little bit better in how he, has been dealing with his multiple witnesses with mental health concerns. But that's not, a criticism specifically of Salts. It's more something that is an issue within the legal profession generally.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I think in hindsight, both lawyers are going to go, we could have done this better, or I could have done that better, or we should have done this, or we should have done that. But everything is resting on this jurisdiction. Well, I mean, KJ was saying that Nat's screenshots were doctored, but what she submitted as being true, I really couldn't actually tell. I couldn't tell you if you put them, if you lined them up, I wouldn't tell you what was true and which was fake. See, that's the thing. There's all these Twitter accounts. They're still going. Whoever it is still going. Yeah, I think you're right, Harmony. That it's gotten personal.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And like I said, it's not a criticism specifically directed at Salts. It's just an issue generally in that the way often lawyers interact with vulnerable people, and just the legal, the legal system generally is often not as careful as it needs to be.
Yep. Well, see, Claire's saying that she reckons that the fact that they've asked twice for the court to intervene could indicate that the judge is going to keep it, and that the judge may do it. Judge may say, you know what, you keep wanting me to sort this out, it's mine.
It's certainly possible.
So, I mean, if there is
I think Emily feels that way.
Does she?
Yeah, I think Emily's view is that the requests for the judge to step in actively give her jurisdiction, whereas I think Uncivil's view was a bit different in that it's just procedural.
Yeah, because yeah, and it's interesting to hear all the different lawyer. I mean, yeah, to hear all the different lawyers give their perspectives. Well, yeah.
I mean, if lawyers agreed on everything, what's the what would be the purpose of lawyers in the court system? Right?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that one's right or one's wrong. It's just that everybody reads things in a different way. Look at how we've had everything read tonight.
Yes, and we've just been discussing, the existence of the emails effectively, and there's so many ways you could interpret them, and all of those ways are, a lot of those ways would be reasonable. And I think that is also what a lot of the discussion is about, how Salts has behaved and how Brown has behaved. They might think each other is, that the other is behaving terribly, but they might feel like with the information they've got in front of them that they're behaving in a reasonable way.
Dutch Spirit says, if you follow this case, we're here for a long time together. I would love that. Well, yes, it's going to be a long, drawn-out case, I think. But anyway, so I think we should say goodnight to Poppy Seeds and let her go and do whatever you do now at this time. But thank you very much for joining me. It was great to have you. And we're going to end. We'll end the stream there, so you've got time to replay it back if there's anything that you want. And if you have any further questions, please make sure that you ask the questions, and we can get them answered for you. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Poppy. I hope you could understand what's the time in Oz. It is, what is the time?
11:30.
It is 11:24 in Melbourne and Sydney. So everyone's saying thank you for the spreadsheet. Thank you, Poppy. All right, so I will see you all tomorrow. And we will speak then. All right, thank you, Poppy.
Thanks, Jo.
All right. Bye.